Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Wednesday. It's midway through the week. Sorry, couldn't get my words out. And welcome to today's Lunch and Learn session. So my name's Roisin. I'm one of the program managers at Enterprise Nation, and I'm joined by Nikki Wheeldon, who is a serial entrepreneur. She's also the co-founder of not one, not two, but 3 businesses, including Jampot, Hi 52 and Communal Brew. Hi Nikki, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem, it's good to be here.
It's great to have you on today's session. And speaking of today's session, we're going to be taking you through how to manage your time to create a better work and life balance as well. So before Nikki goes into her presentation, so the format of today's session, she has a presentation that she's going to be going through, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end of the session. I wanted to let you all know that this Lunch and Learn is part of the Startup UK programme. So the Startup UK programme helps new entrepreneurs to discover everything they need to know about becoming their own boss as well. And the programme has different resources, different education opportunities and inspiration to get you started on your entrepreneurial journey. So for those of you who are joining live, we'll pop a few links in the chat for how you can access the Startup UK programme, and you can also connect with Nikki as well on Enterprise Nation, so please connect with her as well during the session or after the session as well. So for now, I will hand over to Nikki to introduce herself properly and to go through her presentation.
Awesome, thank you very much. Great, so yeah, it's good to be here. I did a session not too long ago, and it was a much longer version of this, so I'm going to try and see if I can rattle through some bits, and there might be bits then that, you know, if you have any questions we can perhaps revisit. So I suppose just to start with a bit about me, thank you for the kind of little intro. I am one of these people who likes to be involved in all sorts of different things. So at the moment I'm the co-founder of Jampot, and then also the co-founder of Hi 52 and Communal Brew. I'm also a speaker coach and a mum of 2. And then there's a few things I like to put some of the things that I've done in the past, because I've had very, very different levels of success with different businesses I've had in the past, and many of which have completely failed. And I think that that's important to kind of show up with those failures as well as the things that really worked. So we're going to whiz through a few different things today. When it comes to time management, people kind of think that they know what that might mean, and what I want to do today is to try to just open your mind up a little bit to just thinking about it in a different way. So we're going to cover working smarter, some procrastination stuff, and just literally whiz through a couple of time management techniques, whiz through some tech tools that might help you. We're going to look at the importance of boundaries and balance, and then also a little tiny bit on delegating for those times when you definitely don't have enough time to do everything. So firstly, to talk about working smarter. Now, what I mean by this is that you need to start to be intentional about how you're managing your time. And that's really the first step, right? Is to start thinking about, how much time do I have? How much time do I have to play with? And what needs doing? And how can I connect the two? So I talk a lot about working smarter, and it's really just about starting to think a bit more about it. So in the same way as you might do financial forecasting or something like that, it's the same kind of thing. We need to start looking at what we have, what we need, and how we're going to get there, but in terms of the time and the workload that you've got. So there's a few points here just to kind of run through. A lot of people don't really think about the kind of the bigger picture of what they're trying to achieve and how they could do that, what is and isn't working, and then starting to think about how can you better plan your time. So one of the main things about working smarter is actually being kind to yourself, in the sense of, when are you most productive? So I understand there are restrictions to this. As a parent myself, you know, I am most productive at certain times that actually don't match up with the times when I need to be doing the school run, or, you know, getting the kids to bed, and that can be frustrating. But I'm still aware of when are the times when I'm going to be most effective when I'm working. Because if you do have the option to kind of choose how and when you're going to work, you need to be really deliberate about choosing those times. So for some people, they get up in the morning and they're super switched on, ready to go. They're going to do their best work in those couple of hours in the morning. Whereas if that same person then decides they're going to work afternoons, and in the afternoon is when they hit a bit of a slump, it's harder for them to get stuff done, you're going to procrastinate more, you're not going to use your time effectively. So be smart about the time you've got. Think about when you're most productive and try to plan the tasks that need to be within those times. Also include personal tasks. So don't forget that you've got your work stuff, but you've got your personal stuff too, and you need to plan that in, because otherwise you might find that stuff slips. So even things like blocking out time to go to the gym, or making sure you need to renew a passport application, put it in your task list, make sure it's going to get done, because that's how we start to find this balance. It doesn't have to be one or the other, they can be combined. So looking at these types of things, it's really important to be realistic and to also be flexible, so you're aware that things can change very fast. So you might have a plan and it's all working really, really well, and then suddenly something changes and you have to rethink that plan and you have to be able to adapt. And that's really a case of just trial and error as well, like trying things out, knowing when are the best times for you to work and how you might manage that, and then knowing how to kind of navigate yourself to that point. And then lastly on here, accountability is a big one. So maybe find some other people that you can work with, even just, remotely, who know the type of things you're trying to achieve and can help make sure you are doing it. So you're all kind of going to work at similar times, or you're going to block out like a real focus block of an hour and you're going to sit on a Zoom call and do that at the same time, so that you're both doing it. And that accountability can be a really good way to make sure you're committing to what you need to do. So procrastination is something that we definitely need to talk about, because for most people, this can be the biggest problem with time management. And what's interesting to think about with procrastination is that it's not something that's just made up and like you just happen to kind of be bad at being focused. It's actually kind of a proper sciencey thing that's happening to you. So when you don't really want to do something, studies have shown that basically it triggers the same area of your brain as if you're in pain. So it causes discomfort, it causes unease, and that can mean that you just don't want to do that thing. So you keep putting it off, you find different things you need to do, and unfortunately the only answer is to actually do it, because the same studies showed that if you push through that feeling of discomfort and unease, it does get better. So if there's something that you're putting off, the best thing you can possibly do is to just do it. Sit down, first thing of the day, just do it. And it will help you then push on to the next thing, and to kind of get past that. But I think it's quite satisfying knowing that procrastination isn't just something that some people are just, I'm just a bit of a procrastinator. Like, it is actually a thing that, is happening to us. And there is a way around it, but unfortunately, there's not an easy way. We have to kind of try to just push through it and get that task done. So there's a few things here of how you can tackle that. And one thing is to focus on the process over the product. So if you've got a big project you're trying to complete, don't think too much about the end goal. Break it down into processes and think about achieving those goals as you go. Because each time you push past that slight unease kind of feeling, you'll get to the next bit, and then you'll be able to focus on, right, I've done that, hooray, reward yourself, right, next thing, off you go. So break it down and focus on the overall process, not necessarily the end product, because you might find you feel a bit overwhelmed by focusing on that end product, when actually it's easier to just focus on getting little things done and chipping away at that end project. So I put here Eat That Frog, which is actually a really great book if people want to look into this more. But the idea of this is that you do the thing that's most important and that you don't really want to do first. So you do those things, you get them out of the way, and then you can do other stuff. So it's about starting to think about the things that need to be done and almost categorizing them into what is really important, what is top priority, and then do those top priority things, those big tasks first, get them out the way, and then you can carry on and kind of get on with other bits and pieces. So we're going to whiz through the Pomodoro method next, which is a time management technique which people find incredibly effective. And when I was thinking about what to try to include today, because we don't have, you know, a huge amount of time, is I wanted to really make sure that there was some real solid takeaways where you could try something like today. And the Pomodoro method is definitely one of these. So what this does is it kind of combines a couple of things. It combines this idea of having these super productive moments where, you know, you've got your best possible time, focus on that thing and just get it done. But it also helps you by giving you these regular kind of breaks. So if we have a look at how we do it, here's a little kind of image for us to work through. So you start off by choosing something you want to do. So you've got a particular task in mind and you basically choose to spend 25 minutes on that thing. So if it's a bigger task, you might be choosing to do like a part of it, but you know that for those 25 minutes, you are not going to do anything else. And you've got to be quite strict about this. So don't let yourself get distracted, you know, minimize the things around you that might cause distraction and focus just for 25 minutes on that thing. And that is just long enough that your brain can really focus on it. And just as it starts to maybe get a bit tired or distracted, you stop. So at the end of the 25 minutes, you stop and you have a 5-minute break. And this is equally important that you have the break. So get a cup of tea, stand up, jump around, I don't know, have a quick chat. If you dare, maybe check your WhatsApps or your Facebook, but be careful because you've only got 5 minutes and then you're going to have to come straight off again. And then you repeat the same thing. So after you've done it 4 times, you then have a longer break. And that's like about a 2-hour space then that you've done. The thing about Pomodoro is it's so popular and it's such a well-known method that there's loads of tools that can help you. So if you have a smartwatch, you can get Pomodoro apps for your watch. You can get Pomodoro apps that go on your desktop. You can get Pomodoro apps on your phone. And what they help you do is have that kind of real strict structure. And my favorite one is Pomodoro podcasts. So you can listen to a podcast and they basically do 25 minutes of playing, you know, kind of animal sounds or music or whatever as kind of background stuff. And then at the end of the 25 minutes, they stop, they chat for 5 minutes. So everybody kind of knows, right, that's time for us to stop and have a little break. And then they all go back into it again. So you kind of work alongside the podcast. And again, that can work quite well if you're doing accountability stuff, if you're working with a group, because you can all say, right, I'm going into my Pomodoro now, see you in 25 minutes, get that work done, then have a stop and have a quick chat about how you're getting on. So this is a really, really good method and one that's definitely worth just trying, just to see how you find it. And you might find you want to tweak it a bit and work in different ways, but it's a really good start of just a way to just have a go and see if you can start to work a little bit smarter and block out what you want to do when. So another method that is really, really useful and works incredibly well and is worth trying if you can is time boxing. So time boxing is basically a time management method where you use your calendar as a base and you start to really think about what you're going to do in each block of time. So how we do it, I'll show you an example in a minute of a kind of a mock calendar that I've done. But basically, you want to plan out what you need to do and make sure it's in manageable sections. Be realistic about how much you can do in a day, because if you if you assume you're going to be able to do all of this work and then actually you find you haven't been realistic, you might get a bit disheartened and it's harder to keep going. So be really realistic about how much time you need to do things. Decide a clear quitting time. So make sure you know when are you going to stop working. And this comes under boundaries as well, which is something we'll chat about in a little bit. But just make sure that you know when are you going to start, when are you going to stop. Include personal things. So as we said, going to the gym, having a lunch break, making sure that you've blocked out some time to, be on hold with the gas company about your bill or whatever. Block the time out. Use color coding and emojis as well, if that's your thing. I love an emoji on a calendar. And just remember to be flexible and try different things. There's no set way that this has to work. You can really kind of flex around what works for you. So this is an example really so that you can see how that might look. And obviously I've only just put project work, but what I would recommend is you literally say exactly what you're going to be doing in those work sessions. Now, as an example here, you can see I start each day with a triage section in this example, and actually in my day-to-day life. For me, triage is an opportunity to get all of those things out the way that are playing on my mind or that need doing and I'm not managing to get to them. So for me, triage might be some of those eat that frog moments where there's something that I know is only a quick job. It might only take me 10 minutes. You know, I need to call and book a doctor's appointment, or I need to check something, or like all those little things that get in the way and that sometimes play on my mind because I know I haven't done them. I spend half an hour each morning doing my triage, which is just rattle through a load of bits and pieces that are then just done. And then after that, in this example, I've got emails and LinkedIn, because for me, I want to block out that time to go through my inbox, to check my LinkedIn messages, to go through that type of stuff, so that then I can focus on the project work and I'm not constantly being drawn away by having to go to my emails. So what you'll see is later in the day, on each day, is I have another section for emails and messages and community catch-ups. The reason for that is because if we're being realistic, there's a good chance that if you spend half an hour blasting out emails, that come the afternoon, a lot of those people will have responded, and then you kind of need to do it again. So rather than having an hour in the morning and nothing else throughout the day, if you have two sections, it's going to give you a chance to blast out a load of that stuff in the morning, then get on with some other bits, and then you'll see things pinging in throughout the day, and then later in the afternoon, you know, go and do another batch. So you've got these project work, you know, bulks here. I try to do 2 hours when I can, because that's my 4 Pomodoros. So it allows me to kind of, you know, do those sections. And then you'll see there's other things where, you know, I've very clearly blocked out the days where I want to go and do the school pickup. And also on a Friday morning, you know, I block out some time to do expenses and finance stuff. So just checking that I've got receipts for things I need, that I'm on track in terms of invoicing and stuff like that. And just factoring in those breaks to make sure that you are likely to have them, I think is really important too. So this is our time boxing, and obviously this will look so different from person to person, but the reason I share this is just an opportunity for you to see what it could be like for you. So bear with me, my mouse is just frozen. So usually in this session, I go through a few different slides of tech tools, and we don't have time today, but I wanted to just flag it anyway, because there are so many tools that can help you with your time management, and they're often free and they're often really easy to use. And what I will do is literally just flag up like a couple that are worth really kind of mentioning on here. So if you are somebody who struggles with notifications, if you're obviously on an Apple device, they have their own, you know, focus mode now, where you can choose what notifications to literally block out. So you will not get those notifications when you're in focus mode. But you also got apps like this, Freedom. This is one called Forest. And what these do is they help you, they're notification blockers. And you can have them across your desktop, you can have them across on your phone. And Forest in particular is a really cute one, because it plants a tree when you start a session. And if you go on your phone and start looking at something you're not supposed to look at, it basically kills the tree, which is a little extreme. But it really shows you how often you pick up your phone or you get distracted by something. And actually just switching off those notifications when you're in a focused point of your work is a really good way to just literally stop it from happening. So these are really good ones to have a look at. There's several different project management things here. You've got ClickUp, you've got Asana. There's also, you know, there's loads of other ones like that. And they're basically digital to-do lists. And the reason they're good is because if you're out and about, you can make sure that you are, anything that springs into your mind, you just put it straight into your to-do list. And then when you're having those focused work times, you can then go through the list and make sure that you're not kind of missing anything. And then lots of other ones on here, but the only other ones to just mention is Clockify and Toggle are time tracking apps. And this can be really useful when you're at the beginning of your journey, when you're actually not sure how much time you're spending on things or what is taking up most of your time. And if you spend a couple of weeks logging every single thing you're doing, you might start to see, oh, I'm actually spending like 3 hours a week doing invoicing to clients, or, you know, I'm wasting loads of time doing this particular thing. And that can help you then start to look at planning your time out better, because you can see where you're spending your time. And both of these have free versions that you can use. So really whizzing through those, because obviously, you know, it's very much a case of rattling through those at the moment, but there's lots of different things that you can use to help you. So the importance of boundaries and balance, this is really important when you're thinking about this kind of idea of work-life balance, this idea of how you want to get to that end goal of making sure that you are working in a way that's healthy and that's sustainable. So boundaries are really important because you need to know what they are, and then you need to let other people know what they are. So when it comes to your time management, managing the work you're doing, you need to think about what these boundaries are. And here we've got a few tips. You know, when do you want to work? When don't you want to work? So maybe you really like to only work Monday to Thursday, and on Fridays you're off for the day, or you just want to work in the mornings. Who you want to work with and who you don't want to work with. If you run your own business, you know, you might want to think about the types of clients you want to work with, and make sure you're kind of reminding yourself of those boundaries. And then also just remembering that some boundaries are driven by limits. So make sure you know yours, like literally how much time do you have to play with each week? And that starts to set some boundaries for you. Implementing them is really difficult, but the first step is making sure that other people know about them. So it's all well and good saying, I've decided I'm not going to work after 5 o'clock every day. I'm not going to respond to anything. But you've got to make sure that your team know, that your clients know, that anybody that you're working with, that they actually know that that's something you're going to start doing. Because I think it's really important to understand, for them to understand your boundaries, but also for you to know what theirs are. Like, do they have boundaries that they're trying to make sure happen? And also just making sure that you know, if you tell as many people as possible, you're more likely to stick to them, because other people know that you're not supposed to be responding after 5 o'clock. So you're less likely to do it because you've told them you're not going to. So then make sure you don't. And then also just this last one, just be realistic. The perfect work-life balance doesn't exist. It's a complete flex. There's going to be times when you're working more and times when you do get to have more of that kind of time for yourself. And you've got to just remember that's ever changing, and just be able to flex with it. If you know what needs to be done and how you might do it, then you can kind of afford to flex, because you have a plan in place and you know how to kind of be able to get round that. And then lastly, kind of how and when to delegate. So this is really important, because you might find that actually when you look at the stuff you're trying to get done and the end goal, you know, what would you like that balance to look like? What are you doing? You need to think about what you're also not doing and what somebody else could be doing for you. So in terms of how and when to delegate, you need to have a look at your workload and see, like, is it possible for you to do everything? You know, can you actually get all this stuff done? What's taking up your time? What are you spending time on that actually doesn't need to be you? Could somebody else do this quicker because they're an expert in this field, whereas it's taking you a few hours because you're not, you know, you're not doing it all the time? Obviously, is it financially feasible? You know, make sure that you can obviously afford that, but by having that help, would it mean that it frees up more time for you to go out and get more sales or do more billable work? How to find the right person? Obviously, Enterprise Nation is a good place to start. There's a whole wealth of people and, you know, advisors and people on there offering, you know, freelance services or companies that can help, but also, you know, word of mouth, and going with your gut. You know, if you're introduced to somebody and it feels like a good fit, then go for it. But do remember that you might need to put a bit of work in to make sure that works. So making sure you're helping it work, giving clear instructions, honest feedback, giving some time to make sure that relationship's working. But I think that delegating is a big part of actually finding that balance, because it may be more possible than you think, earlier than you think, to actually delegate some things out to somebody else. Or if you've already got a team, to make sure you're delegating the things to your team rather than feeling as though you have to be doing everything yourself. So absolute whirlwind tour there through all of our time management stuff. But I think the main things that I'd really like for people to take away is that there are practical tools and there are things you can try, and there's loads of time management techniques. But I think something to really think about is just actually taking a step back and looking at, what am I trying to achieve? What do I want that balance to look like? And then kind of back engineering it and being like, well, how do I get there? And knowing that that might change and that you need to try different things to really see what's going to work for you. So yeah, I think that that's me wrapped up. I don't know whether there's time for any questions, or if there's anybody that had any questions about anything. Just having a look at the chat now.
Hi Nikki, thank you so much for going through your presentation. I really enjoyed all your top tips, particularly about the time management, and I think there's lots that I can even apply in my day-to-day work. So yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that was just really useful for me to listen into. I had a question. So what advice would you give to someone who's just starting their business, into how they can actually put this into practice, kind of everything that you've gone through? What would you recommend as the next steps for them?
Yeah, so I actually think it's easier when you're first starting out, because you have the opportunity to create your business around what you want to be achieving and around the time you've got. It's much harder when you're further down the line to start to implement this stuff, because you have to change how you're working and let people know. So I think if you're just starting out, it's about being brave enough to look at, how do I want to work? Because I made that mistake with business I've had in the past, where, you know, I took any work I could get, worked with anybody who would want the work, charged awful rates that were really low, because I felt like I needed to just make it work, and then spent 2 or 3 years untangling all of that, realizing actually, you know. So I think if you're just starting out, the main thing is to actually map it all out. Like, have a look at what you want to achieve, how much time are you going to have each week, what needs doing within that time, how are you going to split it, and if that starts to scale, thinking about what you would do next. Yeah.
That's great, thank you so much. Yeah, I thought I'd just ask that question because I know that listening onto this call, we have a couple of new startups who are listening in. So Ray's got quite a specific question, so I'm going to read it out. She said that she saw dopamine mentioned on one of your slides. Can you just elaborate a little bit more about dopamine and its relation to getting triggered with reward? She just wants to hear a little bit more about that, if that's okay.
Yeah. So do you know what? So I was a bit worried we were out of time, which is why I skipped that. But it's actually really interesting, and it's about the link between motivation and dopamine. So motivation is a really interesting one when it comes to procrastination, because when you kind of are experiencing motivation, it's basically all about that dopamine hit that you get when you reach your goal. So when you're trying to plan things to do, you want to use that in your favor, because you know you're going to feel good when you do that thing. So when you're kind of procrastinating, or you're kind of thinking, oh, I don't want to do this, like, think of a reward, like literally what is a little treat that is going to make you feel kind of better. Aim for that, and then actually when you succeed with the thing that you're trying to do, you will obviously get the nice little treat, but you also literally get the same kind of dopamine hit as you get, you know, when, I mean, people talk about social media, when people like your comments and stuff like that, but it literally feels good. Your body likes it. It's addictive. So the more that you can kind of set those goals and achieve them, the better. But it's about being realistic, so they're ones you can achieve, rather than having these big long goals that you're struggling to get to. Break them down into little achievable things and get those little mini dopamine hits as you go, ready for the big one when you kind of finish the project and you get to pop the champagne and, you know, really kind of celebrate. So there's a bit more about that I can share, but that's kind of what that's linked to, essentially.
That's great. Thank you so much for explaining. And yeah, I loved that question from Ray as well, because I always find it really interesting when speaking about the brain and how the nervous system works. And I was even on a training session yesterday about something completely different, and we got all taught all about how our brain works in response to different things. So yeah, really, really interesting. So thank you so much for that question, Ray. Got one final question from Lacadia. I know we've just come to time, but I wanted to get it in. She's asked for some advice on where you would fit disturbances like phone calls in terms of your time management plan.
So I think it's very dependent on your business and your job, right? Because there are some jobs where you absolutely need to answer a call, right? But there are other jobs where you really don't. So for our landline number for Jampot, we use an app called Circle Loop, and it's brilliant. It basically, people think they're calling a landline number, but they're actually calling an app on my phone. And what I'm able to do is choose when it diverts to voicemail, what message they get, what times is it available, and I can also kind of just snooze when it needs to go straight to voicemail. And what's useful for me is that I know what type of calls I'm going to get to that number, and it's almost never things that need to be dealt with immediately. It's almost always things that can go to voicemail. So I think it's about your business and what you need. But in terms of notifications, it's about taking a step back and thinking about, like, will the world collapse if you don't answer that call immediately, if you don't immediately respond to that WhatsApp or send an email straight away? And the answer is usually no. And when you kind of take a breath and realize, actually, could I have times of the day where I allow that phone to come through? But are there times of the day where I'm at my most productive, where I want a solid 2 hours to block everything out, where I'm just going to mute those calls, and then I'll deal with them once I come off that session? So I think it's just about being deliberate with it rather than letting them distract you. Maybe try to choose times when it's okay for them to distract you and you're in control of it then.
That's great. Thank you so much for answering that final question. And Lacadia, hope that helps as well. So we've actually come to the end of today's session. I always find these sessions go super, super quickly. But I hope everyone who's been listening in live has found this session really useful. As you know, we've gone through how you can manage your time to create a better work-life balance. And our speaker today has been Nikki Wheeldon, who is the co-founder of Jampot Business Support. And she's gone through so much with us today, including how you can manage your time better and also her easy wins for time management as well. So please do connect with her on Enterprise Nation if you want any further support for your business. And I know there was a couple of questions in the chat about the recording for today's session. Don't worry, we will be sending around a post-workshop email with a recording of today's session in there, so please watch out for that this afternoon. And yeah, as I mentioned, if you do have any other questions for Nikki or need any further support, then please do connect with her. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, this Lunch and Learn has been part of the Startup UK programme. So the Startup UK campaign provides you with practical and informative sessions like this one, all about starting a business. So please visit enterprisenation.com/startupuk if you need any further support with starting up your business. And I believe that link's been put in the chat for anyone who's been listening in live. So for now, I will leave everyone who is listening in live to have a good rest of your lunchtime. And thank you so much for joining us today. And I wanted to extend a final thank you to our speaker today, Nikki.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a good rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone.